Us and welcome to Self-Directed IRA Saturday. My name is Zach Wilson, and I'm one of the IRA specialists here at Quest Trust Company. So before we get started, I got to give you the disclaimer, right? Everything that you're about to see here is for your educational purposes only, all right? Quest, we like to offer you as much education and resources as we can to both our investors and our clients. But with that being said, Quest does not offer any tax, legal, or investment advice. So for those of you who don't know us, a little bit about Quest. We are the largest self-directed IRA custodian in the state of Texas. We have about 20,000 active investor clients all across the country. We currently hold over $2 billion in assets under administration. We have over 100 employees, and 34 of which are certified IRA services professionals. Now, as it stands currently, we have about $400 million in undirected cash sitting in our clients' accounts, right? This represents opportunity. Whether you're a current Quest client or an outside investor, this is where your opportunity lies to build the relationships that you need and find the funding that can get your deals done, right? But before you make any investment at all, what's always the first step? Educate yourself, right? Check out our YouTube, check out our Facebook, go to our website. You'll see tons of resources and tons of videos ranging from everything from the basics of a self-directed IRA all the way to the ins and outs of investing into a syndication and what that looks like within your IRA, right? We have all the resources that you could need to answer just about any questions that you might have. All right. Now, once you're educated, once you're comfortable with the investment that you're looking to make, well, it's not going to find itself, right? So the next step is always networking. Guys, take advantage of all the networking opportunities that we can offer you, right? We have weekly live self-directed IRA classes at noon on Tuesdays, right? We have self-directed IRA Saturdays like today, right? Every Saturday at noon. We also have a virtual happy hour on the fourth Wednesday of every month. That is specifically dedicated just to networking, right? That's where you can build those relationships. You can have that open dialogue of the investments that you're looking at and get some opinions and some feedback from some maybe more seasoned investors on what you're looking for, right? But by far, our most common networking opportunity is going to be our self-directed IRA socials, right? That's going to be on the first, second, and third Tuesday of every month in Houston, Austin, and Dallas, respectively. Now, it starts at 6:30 every Tuesday. And it'll open up to give you some time to network, get to meet everybody, talk with everybody there. Then we'll go to the presentation for whatever speaker that's going to be speaking there. And then after, we're actually bringing back our pitching, right? So if you have some deals and you have some ideas that you want to share with the group, that's your opportunity at the end, right? And if you're in the Houston area, come check us out on Cinco de Mayo. We're actually holding a networking event at the market. It's going to be in Casa Nomad. It's off Shepherd right by I-10. It's from 4:30 to 7:30, and until 6, ladies get complimentary drinks, and all Quest clients have complimentary drinks on Quest for your first drink. All right, come check us out. We're going to be there with Blink Lending. Tons of networking opportunities going to be there, right? But the big announcement is finally we are bringing back our Quest Expo. Guys, it's been a couple years since we've been able to have it in person, so we're so excited to be bringing it back. It's going to be in Houston, Texas from September 23rd to 25th. There's going to be tons of speakers there, tons of networking opportunities, right? We have about 30 speakers. We expect around 900 people to show up. So there will not be a shortage of information and resources there. We're going to cover a wide range of topics going over just what it looks like to hold real estate in your IRA to cryptocurrency. And guys, we're even going to address inflation and the role that alternative assets can play in your portfolio when mitigating your risk due to this inflation that we're experiencing, all right? If you've got any questions moving forward, we'd be happy to help you. One of our IRA specialists, reach out to one of our IRA specialists. We can get you even a discount on those tickets on top of the early bird pricing. All right. Moving forward, if you've got any questions with the presentation at all, throw them in the chat. We have another IRA specialist in there who's going to be answering all of those for you. If after the presentation is done, you still have some more questions that pop up, shoot me over an email. Here's my email on the screen, or give us a call and ask to speak to an IRA specialist. We'd be happy to help you. Now, without further ado, to address the problems and solutions of owning real estate within your IRA is Quest Trust Company President Nathan Long. Nathan, you there?
How are you? Hey,
there we go.
Zachary?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing good. Happy to be here on a Saturday again. We're getting events back together. It's fun. I really enjoy when we have the live ones. Those are becoming exciting again.
Yeah, I'm glad we're finally bringing them back. All right, so let me go ahead and we'll share your screen on there, and then I'll give you the floor.
All right. So guys, as I talk, I'm going to give a little basics presentation about problems and solutions in buying real estate. It's going to have some basic information in the thing. Then I'm going to actually dive into some things that I see people do that's good to be discussed about if we're going to buy real estate inside of our IRA. Now, if you have questions, I want this to be as interactive as possible, but I can't see the chat box. So what you just need to do is put your question in the chat box. Nicole's on with us, Nicole Fanos, and what she will do is she's IRA specialist, been with us for a long time, and she'll either answer your questions or she'll stop and interrupt me if she thinks it's a good topic as we're going on doing it. I think Zachary kind of went over the disclaimer already, but it is really, really important to understand what everyone's role is as you do things, especially as you start to learn to become more and more of a deal architect. You need to understand the role of Quest, and it's our job to process your self-directed transaction. And when you do a good transaction, we'll charge you fees. Unfortunately, we also charge you fees when you do a bad transaction. The point being is with a self-directed IRA, you got to be careful. Our job is to follow your direction, your written direction as you give it to us as what to invest in. It's not to look at the investment at all. Matter of fact, we're obligated to invest in what you tell us to invest in. So make sure if you meet someone at one of our events or outside event or anything, always take the time to do the do, which is taking the time, to make sure you understand the investment. And I always ask, think about what would happen if it goes bad. If it goes bad and you know what to do, and you can live with that, then it's probably a safe enough investment for you. But most of the time people get in trouble, they only look at the good side. They didn't look at the what if side, and they don't know how to deal with it on the what if side. So sometimes they just hide, and that's one of the worst things. If you ever do have a bad problem inside your IRA, one of the best things you can do is call your IRA specialist and talk to them about it. And do that as early as possible. Their education they can provide is amazing. So I'm going to give some basic information. A lot of people get confused as to what is a self-directed IRA, and they're also confused as to how complex self-directed IRAs are. And the reality of it is, I'm going to demonstrate throughout this today, is that they're not very complex at all if you can understand just a few basic rules. What makes a self-directed IRA complex is real estate investment. Real estate investments in themselves can be very complex, right? There's earnest money and all types of contracts and insurance and pissed off people and all types of things go on when we're talking about purchasing real estate. And adding that extra layer of a self-directed IRA in there can complicate things. But why would people do it? Well, it's one of the best overall performing assets you could own no matter what. And why? It's simple. It tends to go, it plays both sides of the fence. You're getting cash flow and appreciation. If you can play that over long term and do good at purchasing and managing the property, it becomes a very highly paid thing. I know a lot of people mess it up on the managing of the property or even on the purchase of it. But if you can handle all the diversity in it, it's a phenomenal way to build wealth and probably one of the best that there is. But with a self-directed IRA, it's really not a different type of IRA. Self-direction is just a marketing term. It's just a term describing what type of IRA it is. All right. Or what we do with it would be more properly put. So most of my clients have an account with someone like Charles Schwab or Fidelity or someone like that. And those accounts, they hold their publicly traded assets. With Quest, we just hold private assets, right? And often we're just transferring back and forth between the two different types of accounts. All right. And so it's important to understand that self-direction is just trying to describe that we're holding private assets, not publicly traded assets. And over at Quest, we're not licensed securities agents. We're not selling stock bonds and mutual funds. That's not what we do. We specialize specifically in investments that are related to real estate primarily. So why would you want an account like this? It adds for extra diversification for sure. I know a lot of people who are really happy over what happened over these last several years with the stock market doing it, having the diversification of real estate. But it also allows for everything to have your wealth grow tax-free or have tax savings in it. As you develop wealth, as you start to learn to invest, you must, think a little bit about tax savings and other things. But I think that one of the most overlooked or important things about these accounts, I went ahead, sorry, is social investing. Honestly, a lot of people don't even think about it, but I like to lend a lot. It's easier to me than own real estate. That's just personally me. But even as I lend, or if I buy real estate and I'm taking my IRA, I know what I'm investing in. I'm typically buying a property that's in my local community. It's getting fixed up, so they're providing jobs and buying wood or whatever else is needed, paint, providing jobs in my local area and doing a lot of things. So I like lending on people fixing up real estate because it's also making my community where I work, live, and play a better place. And a lot of people don't associate that as with social investing. They think it's got to be like a windmill farm or something, I don't know, crazy like that. But it also allows you to invest in the things that you know and understand the best. And I think that's the most important. And I talk to so many real estate professionals, and I'm always like, oh, what are you invested in with your IRA? And they're like, oh, stock bonds. And I'm like, what? You're like one of the biggest professionals out there. Come on, let's invest in what you know, which is going to be probably real estate. It's important to understand that if a self-directed IRA isn't a type of account, that there are different types of accounts that can be self-directed. And we break them up into different plans. It's almost like a menu, right? It's a traditional and a Roth IRA. And Roth IRAs are really important because once you've gotten one, you can grow that money tax-free. And a lot of people sometimes get confused that only a Roth IRA can be used to purchase real estate, and that's not true. Matter of fact, most of the money is in a traditional IRA. And the reason why it's in a traditional IRA is it came from a 401k or 403b or one of those employer type of plans. So it's tax deferred. But if you want to get some really good education, make sure you take time to watch our class about Roth conversions. I think we're just updating that too. So that should be good. But also employer plans. And we'll talk a little bit more about employer plans later on in this presentation. But we have self-directed accounts that are for people who are self-employed or have small businesses. We're not talking about self-directing your 401k while you're still working at the widget factory or something. But once you've had separation of service, you can use those ones. But a lot of us are self-employed. And a big focus might be today on solo, or what you may have heard as called individual 401ks. These are for people who have self-employment with no common law type employees. But also, you can invest in some of my favorite type of investing is got to be with the health savings account. It's one of the most amazing accounts out there. Most people don't understand it. But also using Coverdell accounts to bring in your nieces and nephews and other things into your investing. And I'll watch it. If you haven't seen our class on specialty accounts, that's a phenomenal class with tons and tons of information on it. And one of the best things that I love to do, especially when I'm investing in real estate, is I love to partner. So what I'll do is I'll take my IRA and I will partner it with my wife's IRA. And with my nieces and nephews, my mother-in-law, pardon me, all types of people. And what this does is I can put a whole bunch of people IRA on one deed. And with the systems at Quest, as the payments come in, it'll just split up automatically according to their percentage of ownership. Now, I can't move the money into proportionate between the accounts, but by doing this, I can take these little accounts and allow them to piggytail on a larger account. And there's a lot of advantages to being able to do that. It's also teaches younger people like in your family about how to take their small account and what happens when you invest in real estate and things to do with it. I think it's one of the most important things to learn how to partner these accounts. Even though they're disqualified persons, they can't buy, sell, or trade from each other. Doesn't mean they can't partner as long as they keep those percentages of both expenses and income, directly related to their percentage of ownership. There are restrictions on some of these IRAs, and I'm going to talk about these briefly. You can get more information in our more basic model, but there's people restrictions, there's transaction restrictions, and investment restrictions. The one that's really gets us, and that we always have to understand, are people restrictions, right? They're people that are disqualified to the IRA. They can't buy, sell, trade, extend services, or receive a benefit either directly or indirectly. Who are those people? Well, that's you. You are a disqualified person to your IRA. I know it sounds a little weird, but the idea is your IRA is separate from you. It is set aside for a specific purpose, your retirement. I guess if it's a health savings account, it'd be the purpose of a health savings account, or healthcare or whatever. But it's a specific purpose, and you're getting a specific tax treatment on that. And that can't be commingled in such a way, typically, with your own money as you're going along. So it's important to understand that we separate out our IRA money, and we don't want to do anything like extend or credit or other types of things with the IRA. In addition to yourself, there are people, because of their relationship to you, who are equally disqualified as well, which includes yourself, your spouse, your lineal ascendants and descendants, their spouses, and companies those people own, control, manage, or highly compensated employees thereof. Notice I didn't say brothers or sisters or stepchildren. It's a very specific thing. If you have any questions, just ask one of our many IRA specialists. Remember, all education services are free. And again, if you have any questions about anything, place in the chat box. Nicole is there. She's monitoring, she's listening, she's answering questions, and she can interrupt as well. All right. Remember, prohibited transaction restrictions are what the people can't do that are prohibited. So once you define the people, that it's you, your spouse, your lineal ascendants, well, what can't they do? Well, they can't buy, sell, trade, loan, or extend a service or receive a benefit either directly or indirectly. We have a good class about that as well. We have a class about everything. There are some investment restrictions, but they honestly just don't affect us hardly at all. It's just life insurance and like collectibles, like artworks, rugs, antiques, metals, gems, or I love this one, alcoholic beverages. Come on, if you're buying booze in your IRA, you got a bigger problem. But anyway, ha ha ha. All right, so what can you invest in your IRA? Well, different things. At Quest, we like to break it out into different departments. All right, we have a department that deals with just notes. There's people that lend to people buying houses, and that's all they do. And why? Because that's a very specialized thing. And then we have a department that is just private entities. Well, what is private entities? That's most of the time people are funding things like apartment complexes or, hospitals, shopping malls, whatever, big commercial properties where we're in those things. Got a great class about that as well. But today we're focused on real estate. And we specifically carve out a department just for real estate because it is more complex than most other investments, just because there's so many steps involved, the contract, the offer, the earnest money, the insurance, on and on and on and on. So lots of steps. It's not like we're just looking at it, approving it, funding it once. And so our people that work in our real estate department are real estate specialists and understand the process well. They have a relationship with many, many, many title companies in all the different cities that we operate within, which is all across the country. And we're pretty familiar with the process of getting through it. I want to talk a little bit and give an example of real estate, just a real estate deal, just so we can think about it. And then I'm going to get into what I call some problems in buying real estate and some solutions. Now, this is a real deal. This was quite a few years ago, to tell you the truth, but it's a good example and I like it. And so I continue to do it. There was a John and Jay, and they purchased an office condo. It wasn't the whole building. It's just like part of a building here. It wasn't this one. This is just a random picture someone found on the internet. All right. But you've seen these where the little offices had like a little dental office and different ones. Well, they're going to buy it for $250,000. They each transferred in $150,000 from the brokerage account over to Quest. they were expecting about $50,000 in repairs whenever they transferred it over. Now, this wasn't all the money they had. Again, most of my clients keep an account in both places and transfer back and forth, do the normal stuff with Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Edward Jones, do the weird stuff with Quest, the buying real estate, lending, buying into syndications like apartment complexes, and transfer back and forth. And the reason that you do that is because the cash, when it's sitting with Quest, just sits there. It doesn't earn anything. There's no extra things. So that's why you want to have that relationship and understand. And our transfer department is expert at helping you to move your money back and forth and understanding the time frame and the procedures for the different types of accounts. They made an offer to purchase this building. It wasn't John or Jay that was purchasing it. They were purchasing it with their IRAs. So it was Quest Trust Company for the benefit of John IRA and Quest Trust Company for the benefit of Jay's IRA. And the vesting, or how we take title to property, is extremely important. And we work a lot with the title company to make sure that the vesting happens, because it provides legal protection as well as other types of protection in there by making sure that the IRA is properly listed. They've completed some internal forms. Most people do that online these days. You start the online process and just upload your forms. It's very easy, just like most title companies and stuff these days. But you complete a bi-direct letter to say, hey, Quest, I'm buying this property. Let us know. In this case, there was a $10,000 earnest money. $5,000 came from each check. At closing, don't have to go to closing. You just review the documents online on the Quest account. Quest will handle the closing and sign the documents after you've marked them read and approved. And Quest will directly wire the funds from your IRA to the account. In this case, there was two people. They had partnered together. I've told you about how I think partnering is so important. They had partnered together. In this case, it was 50-50. It doesn't need to be 50-50. It could be 90-10 or whatever it is. Let those little accounts ride on the bigger account, right? But they added this line as to an undivided interest of 50%. And that's very important to understand, is that's dividing that amount. Remember, as the payments come in, rent payments, they're going to be split directly into the accounts according to their percentage of ownership. Okay. Whoops, got ahead of myself, I think. All right. They hired a property manager to oversee the thing. Their rents were handled by the property manager. You don't need to hire a property manager. Matter of fact, quite a few people do it themselves, especially we have expense pay, so you can give your renters a little online and they can just log in and kind of make their payments online. So convenient to do that these days versus like waiting for a check in the mail and all that with these online things. You could see in this thing, they had an $850. This was after paying the property manager how much cash flow they had on the property. It's $425 for each month. You might notice it's a little low. And what was kind of interesting about this, it's got really nothing to do with IRAs, but in this case, the tenants that came in were going to be a dental office and they're moving stuff in. And so the $50,000 they were going to spend was actually to do a lot of repairs on the inside. They wanted to strip out the inside anyway. And so they negotiated a low rent and they paid to move all their equipment in and redo the walls. So basically, they never have spent that extra $50,000. They ended up transferring that back to Charles Schwab, just the thing. So they had 2 years of this lower rent payment in exchange for not having to spend that extra $50,000. All right. Anyway, the property manager submits the rents directly to Quest. They don't go to John and Jay. They can track all their stuff through the computer. Well, what happened? Well, the dental office was doing pretty good. And a couple of years later, the rents in that area had exploded. And so when it came time for them to raise the rents, they said, hey, how about you just sell us the property? They made an offer on the property. They ended up selling the property for $395,000. And then on the day of the closing, just the opposite. They reviewed the documents, signed them, money went back over to Quest. Okay. Didn't crush it, but this was a pretty good investment. Okay. I mean, basically they started each account with $125,000. They made $11,000 in rent and $62,000 on the sale. Right. I think it was there you go. 59% total that they made over 26 months. So pretty good long time period. But again, I think it's better than what most people are doing there. And it was a pretty easy deal for them. This is a pretty realistic type of investment that we see at Quest all the time. That's why I like to use it. Some key points to that story. There was no tax paid on that at all. They bought the IRA bought it. The IRA sold it. There was no tax at all. They only pay tax down the road when you take it out, unless it's a Roth IRA, and then it's completely tax-free forever, those gains on there, right? The accounts involved were SEP IRAs, which are like traditional IRAs, so they go tax deferred, so those days. But if they had done this in a Roth IRA, a Roth 401k, a covered out, or my favorite health savings account, those gains would have been tax-free forever. And they were in total control of the process from beginning to end, even though Quest was the buyer and the seller, just like you tell Charles Schwab to go buy your stock or whatever. You're just telling us to do that. And John and Jay never had to remove money from their account to purchase this. They just directed the account to purchase an asset that was different than a stock. It was a piece of real estate. That's why it's not taxable, because there's never any money removed from the account. And remember, IRAs can partner with other IRAs and even non-IRA money, as long as all expenses and proceeds are split according to their ownership percentages. And John and Jay could have directly had those checks deposited in the IRA instead of using a property manager. That's just what they chose to do in this particular story. So let's look at some problems and stuff. Before I do that, remember, if you have any questions or anything that came up, just hit up Nicole. She'll get you things. Go ahead.
Okay. Perfect. We actually have some questions regarding John and Jay in that case study, and then we have some more. So I thought this would be a good transition. So I want to see this one. So in this example, are John and Jay able to get some of the monthly rent before it goes to the IRA? Kind of know what the answer is here, but wanted to see what your answer would be here.
And again, that goes back to being disqualified persons. All the money your IRA makes is for the purpose of your IRA. Your only benefit can be as you distribute it out to yourself, and most of the time that's in the future. Some people are using their IRA like this. They're at retirement age. They bought a rental property. They want to live off that income the rental property produces. So the way it works is the rental property pays to the IRA. The tenant will pay to the IRA every month. And then every month you set a distribution up to yourself. And that's how you receive the money. But you have to receive it as a distribution from your IRA. You can't skim off some of the money before you send it off. Hopefully that's clear. If not, Nicole will help you a little bit as we go along. What were your other questions?
So we have another one. And again, like we know the answer to that one, but is being your own property manager a prohibited transaction since it's an extra contribution?
That's a phenomenal question. And it's been pondered for a long time, because as you read the codes, it's very unclear. Okay. But, it's been a while now, but the IRS did post an interesting thing. They said they understood that the complexity of real estate can be more difficult than other investments in the IRA. And so there's two sides of this. You can't extend services to your IRA, but you are also have the duty of being a fiduciary to your IRA. In other words, you get to bring to bear all of your knowledge and skills and all of that to make the account better, right? So what can't do? Well, it seems to be this. It seems like you can not definitely touch the money. You don't want to be a property manager in the event of taking money and handling the money. Get that out of there. You can use Quest systems. There's other ways of getting around it, but you can't touch the money. So that part's you can't do. But you could definitely find renters. You can definitely hire contractors. You can definitely negotiate contracts. You can definitely oversee to make sure the things. You can definitely write letters to evict people, so forth and so on. All of that is within your duty as the fiduciary to the IRA. Can't do repairs and can't handle the money. Hopefully that simplifies it a little bit.
Definitely. Keep getting a lot of questions. So I'm going to pick just a couple of more.
No, keep going.
So I'm going to get to two that kind of relate to, and then one that's actually a really interesting question. So This one right here, is there a maximum return that can be expected in IRAs? Is there any IRS rule? For example, is there any problem getting 100% return per year?
No. Matter of fact, just like if you bought a penny stock and bought it for a penny, it goes up to be $1 million, you get it. And if done in a Roth IRA that's properly seasoned and assuming that it's not a prohibited transaction in any way, all that money can grow completely tax free. Next question.
So this one is kind of pivoting a little, but I really like this question because I really want to see your answer to it. I know how I would answer it, but if you want to invest in a syndication on a multifamily unit and you have a traditional and a Roth IRA to pick from, which one of the IRAs would be more beneficial to use?
Oh, that's tough because you got to compare it to all your other investments and what you're doing. All right. So when I'm picking my Roth investments, I want them to be the safest, but also the easiest return. So it depends. Some syndication things I think are pretty good and they're going to pay pretty quick. Some of my syndication things I've invested in, I think 10 years ago, I haven't gotten a return. I didn't expect it at the time that I invested that either. So you got to look at it. So with that, I'd say pick up the phone and have a conversation with your IRA specialist, but it really comes down to you. The IRA specialist can define or educate with this account. This is what happens with this account. This is what happens. Also pay attention to when you need to use it and how the time frame and how long it goes. Sorry. I don't know how you would have answered that, but that's a tough one.
That was actually pretty close. Of just like, honestly, contact an IRA specialist just to go through exactly like what's important to you as an investor and as an individual. So that was pretty close to what I was going to say, but I'm also kind of partial to the Roth IRA, just being a young person and, tax-free distributions in the long
Yes, but compare it. So if I had on the alternative a stock that I was going to buy for $1 and I knew tomorrow it's going to be worth $1 million, I'm just
with an absolutely Roth IRA.
Right. Yeah. Wouldn't it be better to take my Roth IRA money and put it in there? I don't know where the syndication deal is in his overall portfolio. I don't know where the syndication deal is in its timeline, nor do we know his timeline on when he needs to use the money. All of those things play a factor.
All right. Well, I think we'll kind of move on, but there'll be a couple more questions.
Sure, just stop me as we go on. Here's some things that come up, and I'm just going to hit them. I get asked all the time, do I need to use an LLC when I'm purchasing property inside an IRA? Well, let's start. First of all, I think the use of an LLC when buying investment property most of the time is a pretty wise thing to do. The reason is it isolates you against lawsuits, certain types of lawsuits that occur. As they occur, someone slips and falls or something, they can sue the LLC, but they're not suing you personally. They can get the assets in the LLC. Well, and so I think that it makes sense. Do I need one whenever I'm using an IRA? I say, honestly, it's like the adult diaper. It's going to depend. Okay. Yuck. All right. Most likely not. And here's the reasons why you'd want them, or also why you would not. All right. So first of all, I named the number one reason it protects against the lawsuits. Well, remember, an IRA is an entity already. Matter of fact, it's a protected entity. It's pretty strong, right? And it is separate from you. So as it gets sued, you can sue the IRA and get the assets in the IRA, but you cannot get your personal assets. And I've even seen where people holding individual IRAs with individual assets in them, I might hold 5 or 6 different IRAs with Quest, each holding a different asset. Why? To isolate or create that same type of thing. So most likely not. Well, what's the problem with an LLC? We kind of discussed it earlier, and that's disqualify persons. Remember, there are people who can't buy, sell, trade, or extend services to an IRA. Well, that's you. So if you form an LLC, who's going to be that managing member? Remember, you shouldn't touch the money. And you can't provide services, so you cannot be a managing member. Neither can your wife or your children or parents or their spouses. So we got to get someone distanced to be in there. And recently, in this recent legislation, they attacked the overall thing of having an LLC in an IRA, period. And they were going to wipe them out. Now they got rid of it, but I'm telling you, the IRS is paying attention to LLCs that have disqualified people as managing members because they may be doing prohibited transactions. So we definitely in this atmosphere don't want to form an LLC where the managing member is a disqualified person, right? And again, I kind of went over that. The disqualified people are people that can't do. Solutions to a disqualified person: use a non-disqualified person as the managing member, somebody else, not you. And again, that's provided you're shifting some trust over to somebody else, which can be difficult. Honestly, most of the time, the IRA purchasing the property directly in today's time and directly receiving the income and then using the electronic systems to track everything is probably the easiest thing for you to do. I think it's easier than managing real estate outside an IRA because you're not typically tracking depreciation. All right. You can form an LLC trust or make sure the managing member is non-disqualified person on things. Or there is one other solution. I mentioned it before, but that solo 401k, if you qualify for it, it comes with its own set of problems. But if you qualify for a solo 401k, you actually can hold the checkbook. You could have an LLC where you could be the managing member. It's one of the exceptions in that particular account. What's another problem that occurs? I'm trying to talk a little bit faster now because we got a little bit behind on time and I want to keep you guys over, right? Well, how do I handle repairs? I think I mentioned it. Use a general contractor, a property manager. It's easy to pay those invoices through our electronic system, our client portal. It's super simple to easy to use. Just list them. You'll be shocked at how fast that you can get people paid through that. Other people use like a non-disqualified person as a property manager, general contractors. And always make sure that you never do repairs or pay for something yourself. If something happened, let's say emergency or something happened over there, you might want to have your sister pay for those repairs and have her give you an invoice because she's not a disqualified person or something. Never, ever try to always avoid that situation where you're commingling your money with your IRA's money. Can you do your own repairs? Don't swing the hammer. No. They catch you doing that. There's plenty of cases about disqualified people doing that, and they got you by the shorts. You know, are they going to get after you because you went over there and the toilet was leaking and you tightened up the bolt? No. But if you go over there and you're going to do a full rehab using your construction company that you own, don't do it. Right? You could take your construction people that work for you and pay them, I guess, individually to your IRA as long as they weren't disqualified people or something like that. If you're thinking about doing something like that, again, get on the phone with an IRA specialist. Talk about your investment in general. They can usually come up with ways for you to make sure that you can get the rehab done as you do. Here's a problem, Nicole, and I get this one a lot. What if I go over on my rehab? And this is important because if you buy real estate, you should know that it's always going to end up costing you more to fix, especially in today's time with rising cost of building supplies. And it's going to take longer. And so if you go over, normally what you do is you just break out the Home Depot card, you know what I mean? Slam it, whatever you have to do, get that money, get the rehab done with, and get out on, the thing, get it flipped or rent it out or whatever you're going to do. But an IRA can't do that. It's got only so much money in it sometimes, and you could run out. And what happens if that happens, right? Don't use your own money. Well, there's different solutions to the problem. First thing, I sound like a broken record, but if you ever run into this, call your IRA specialist right away. It's important to have one in your pocket, have one that you know and do. Remember, all of our calls to IRA specialists, all education services are free, whether you're a client or not. Even if you're a client with another company, it's okay. But talk about them because they might be able to find ways to do a transfer, a rollover from a different type of an account, right? You might be able to make a contribution to add some money to that account. Or often we've used borrowing from a non-recourse lender. There's lenders that will loan to IRAs and retirement accounts that own real estate, as well as private lenders that would do a non-recourse loan. But never try to use your own money to solve the problem. You're going to get caught and it's going to create a thing. Here's an interesting one. I get asked a lot. Can I list the property myself? If I'm a realtor, I'm a licensed realtor, can I list my property myself? And there's different arguments to it, but I'm going to say yes. But you can't get paid for it. All right. I would say that you, as a fiduciary to your IRA, can represent it and bring all your skills and knowledge. But again, you can't receive a commission or anything else. The IRA can receive a benefit from your knowledge of being a realtor, but you cannot receive it. That's how I've seen the stand draw. I'll give you a similar situation. My wife is a licensed attorney in Texas. She represents lenders, drafting documents, private money lenders, and she will draft documents for her own IRA and her mother's, who's a disqualified person, and mine. She'll draft those documents, but she can't charge her a legal fee. She doesn't charge a legal fee. Instead, she's just performing the service for her IRA. So that's important to understand. We talked about this earlier. Can you be a proper manager? Yes, but you can't involve yourself in any activities directly handling the money, and you can't do repairs yourself. So that's important. I think I already went with that. Here's the thing that I was trying to speed through to make sure I could get into, because it's a little bit complicated. I think it's important to talk about, but can IRAs do an investment that is taxable? And the answer is yes. Unfortunately, there are investments that occur that create taxation. And it's not taxation to you, the person, it's taxation to the IRA. Hang on, take a drink of water. Okay, so the IRA actually has to file its own tax return. It's a special tax return called a 992 and pay taxes on it. Well, what are these things? It's called unrelated business income tax. Well, what would be unrelated? Well, if you owned a business, say you opened an internet business with your Roth IRA, and you did that and you made all this money, could you do that? Well, no, because if you own a business and you're in competition with other people in business, what would happen is that would be an unfair business advantage. So they're going to tax you as running a business. Now, I'll tell you the truth. Most of the time, most investments we see in IRA aren't affected by this cause of owning a business inside the IRA. A lot of people think, oh, well, if I own a apartment complex, it creates that as a problem inside my IRA. And it's not the running the business part. It's another part that we'll talk about. Okay. But it's actually, running a lemonade stand, owning an actual business typically does it. There are a lot of oil and gas investments that will generate unrelated business income tax underneath this. A great person, I talked to Troy Eckert there, tells me a lot, and he's really good at doing different investments and tell you the different ones that will create unrelated business income tax and not over there. But there is sometimes that we get it. And that's when we rent personal property inside an IRA. That's actually seen as running a business. So if you rent out a mobile home and you own the land under it, you're renting real estate. No problem. Take the real estate away. You own the box. You pay rent on the real estate underneath it, and then you rent the property. That is actually deemed as running a business and can create unrelated business income tax. I know a lot of people who do it, and you go, why would you do it? It's profitable. It's very profitable, even after paying the tax. But here is the side that gets us, that there is a problem with owning real estate, and that is when we buy real estate that is debt financed. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, if it has a loan on it. To an extent that a property has a loan, you can be taxed on both your rental income and your capital gains on the property to the extent that it is financed. I know it's a little hard to understand, so let me kind of give it to you in a story if I can. All right. Let's just say your IRA buys a house. Now, it didn't have all the money to buy the house. The house cost $100,000. Instead, it put $40,000 from its IRA and went to North American Savings Bank, NASB.com, North American Savings Bank. They're one of the IRA lenders, or a bank that likes to lend to IRA and real estate. And they got a non-recourse loan. Remember, they didn't borrow the money. Who borrowed the money? The IRA. Didn't extend your credit to it or anything else. That's why I took 40% down in order to get it. But $40,000 down. They went to North American Savings Bank, got the rest of the $60,000. They purchased the property. At the time they purchased it, they were 60% debt leveraged. Everyone follow? Next day, you were able to sell the property. Astonishingly, $200,000, making $100,000 in profit. Da, da, da. All right. Well, what happens to that $100,000? Well, because $40,000 of that house, or 40%, was paid in cash, $40,000 goes to the IRA tax-free. $60,000 is subject to tax. Who has to pay the tax? The IRA. They file their own 990T and have to pay tax on that amount. All right. That amount that is taxable there, what rate do I pay? Well, if I had held it over a year, I could have paid a capital gains rate. But in my story, I sold it in only one day, right? And so therefore, I'm taxed as ordinary income, but not ordinary income as an individual, ordinary income as a trust, because an IRA is not an individual, it's a trust, which kind of means it just shoots straight up to the top almost right away, somewhere around $12,000, I think. You're paying, the full maximum rate of tax. So 20 or 30,000, 20,000, something of that $60,000 is going to go away immediately to Uncle Sam. And I always ask when I'm live, how many people would do this deal? And I'm always shocked because everyone goes, no, man, I wouldn't do that deal. And I'm like, did you hear my story? I started with $40,000. I got it back in another $40,000 in one day. And then I took $60,000 and I split it between me and Uncle Sam. Sign me up. I do that deal every day. The problem with the story isn't the thing. The problem with the story, it's unreal. We don't buy property for $100,000 and sell it the next day for $200,000. If we did, woohoo. But anyway, so my point is just to tell you or identify the problem of taxation when we buy debt leverage property. Now we get to understand the problem. Now we can get into the different solutions to the problem. Okay, so don't be confused about UBIT taxes. If a house pays cash, right, there is none. It says only if we're debt leveraged and only to the extent that the property is debt leveraged. What are the solutions? Let's look at one of my favorites, all right, is depreciation. And then you go, wait a second. I heard that you don't get the use of depreciation whenever you use an IRA. And that's usually true, right? And I've even had very good tax preparing professionals tell me I would never buy real estate in an IRA because you lose one of the most powerful tax benefits of investment real estate, which is depreciation. And these are really smart guys. And guess what? They're absolutely right. But let's go back and examine why is it when we buy real estate in an IRA, we don't have any depreciation? There's no taxation. If I pay cash on that, all the gains happen completely tax-free. Without the use of tax, without any taxation, you cannot use depreciation. It's not that depreciation can't be used. You can't be used against no tax. But as soon as the IRA starts to have to pay tax, it can start to use depreciation. But depreciation works amazingly different inside of an IRA than outside of an IRA. Let me explain. Back to our story. We buy the house, we put $40,000 down, $60,000 of it is debt leveraged, right? But we're not flipping the house in one day. We're doing what most of my clients do. We're buying the house, we're going to rent it out, we're going to hang on to it for appreciation, milk that cash flow, and go for there. So what happens? Well, when they buy it, the rental income comes in. It is subject to 60% in that case, in the case we gave, the profit that comes off of it after paying expenses and after doing repairs, what's left over, 40 or 60% of that is subject to taxation. But we could use depreciation not to make the tax go away, because we know depreciation doesn't make tax go away. What does it do? It pushes that tax off to the future. but I'm going to have to recapture it sometime. When am I going to have to recapture it? When I sell that property, then I have to recapture it because I'm lowering my basis. Everyone that has rental property understands that. But go back to the difference in the IRA is this. We are only taxed on our debt leverage percentage. Remember, I bought the property, I was 60% debt leverage. But what happens if I took depreciation and pushed that taxation off to the future? I could end up paying the property off prior to selling it. And in that case, if I could reach what we call an average indebtedness of 0, basically have the property paid off, for 1 year, then guess what? How much tax would I owe? 0. Often this problem of buying property debt leveraged inside an IRA and worrying about the taxes isn't a problem at all. It's just a paperwork problem. You got to figure out how to calculate the depreciation and use it in order to capture that. Now, not all real estate are the same, right? Not all real estate are we always paying off the property or whatever. But if that is your strategy to buy the property and pay it off as soon as I possibly can, so I can have this free and clear property when I retire, paying me, every month, take those checks out as a distribution and pay me for the rest of your life. If that's what you're going for, depreciation might be a thing. Another solution is a C corporation. And this isn't in today's tax things is good, but you could always form a taxable entity like a C corporation and allow the C corporation to pay tax at its corporate rate and then let the dividends flow completely tax-free. I'll tell you where I've seen this used good. You might want to watch my problems and solutions about entities to understand this. See, the problem is if I buy an apartment complex, I create the same type of unrelated business income tax because I'm buying that debt leveraged. That's what creates my taxation to my IRAs. Well, what I've seen some syndicators do is they form their normal LLC and everybody's, joining into the LLC that are regular people. But whenever an IRA would join, they formed a little separate C corporation off to the side. And that C corporation is where all the IRAs would invest. Why? Because it greatly made it easier for the investments of the IRAs. What would happen is the profits would pay to the C corporation. The C corporation would file one tax return for it's saying take advantage of all the C corporation tax deductions and advantages, and then all the dividends or the profits would remit directly to the IRAs completely tax-free. Just something to think about. Again, we can't give tax, legal, or investment advice, but I can talk about things that other people have done. All right. I know I'm getting low on time, but I'll try to get through this. Final solution to the problem of debt leverage or having, a property that has debt on it in your IRA is a magic bullet. It's the solo 401k, or referred to as the individual 401k. We have these at Quest, but and what's magic about it is if you hold debt leverage property, including syndication type property, into a solo 401k and have held it for over a year, this tax, poof, just goes away. It's like a magic bullet. Woo! Well, Nathan, why didn't you just start with that one in the first place? And the problem with it is because a solo 401k comes with its own little set of problems, but it's a very powerful account. Matter of fact, I've seen people who have taken their IRAs, bought into a syndication deal, realized down the road when the profit was coming that they're going to have to pay unrelated business income tax. They were able to move their in-kind asset of their ownership of that thing into a solo 401k. And by doing so, they completely avoided the taxation because they had already held the property for a year. As soon as they moved it over, as long as they hadn't realized the actual gains yet in there, they were able to avoid it. So what are the biggest problems? The biggest problem with a solo 401k is you have to legitimize it. You can't just go, golly gee, that's a cool account, I want one. You actually have to be self-employed of somehow. And how do they know you're self-employed? Well, you demonstrate it on your tax return. And here's the other part. You have to make a current year contribution, especially in the first year you own the 401k. You have to contribute, not a rollover contribution like from your different IRAs. Even if it's just a little one, a small contribution legitimizes that, and then I can roll over my larger amounts from my traditional IRA, SEP IRAs. Right? There's other problems with solo 401ks because unlike IRAs, they're not administrated by Quest. We're just selling you the plan documents and you're on your own. You actually become your own administrator and have reporting problems and a lot of dangerous responsibility and record keeping, right? But there's a lot of advantages to it, like checkbook control, large contribution amounts. You can even loan money sometimes to yourself under a very limited circumstance. But the biggest one is the exemption on unrelated debt financing as it relates to buying real estate inside your IRA. We have a couple of 401k specialists at Quest. If you have any questions about that, just that. Also, we have a 401k class, of course, on there. Guys, I know this sounds so complicated, but it really isn't. Real estate is complicated. Buying stuff with self-directed IRA is no different than when you go buy stocks. You open an account, name, rank, and serial number, who's going to get it when they die. You add some money by either contributing or moving money over from a current account. You have to know what you're going to invest in, but you got that if you're at this point, right? So locate your investment. There's a little bit of investment funds, and Quest will fund your account. It is really simple. It just seems complicated. And again, what makes it complicated is the real estate itself. But at Quest, you're going to be dealing with professionals every step of the way. And it's always free to talk to an IRA specialist about any problem that you're having. And we make sure that we have more on staff than anybody else. I don't know who that is. That's not any of my IRA specialists, but it's a great picture. How do you get in touch with one? You got a QR code here. I love it. If you get online, now this is not at 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday night, but if it's during business hours, you'll see a little chat box pop up. That's an actual person in our Houston, Dallas, or Austin offices asking you if you need help. It's not one of those little automated weird things. Always pick up the phone and call us, or just give us an email. I think I'm done. How'd I do on time? Any questions? I'm feeling lonely.
All right. We're actually doing perfect on time. 12:58. All right, guys. If you have any more questions, that I'll go ahead and throw them in the chat. We'll address them now. Let me go through, see if there's any that we missed. Let's see. I think we addressed just about everything.
Cool, because I'm gonna
this is a good one. Okay, so it says, can't wrap loans be distributed in a different proportion than the percentage of the contribution itself?
No, you must always, once that percentage has been arranged, then it can't be. Now, there's caveats to all this, right? So, for example, if it's my IRA and my Roth IRA, those are disqualified people. My IRA, once I've established those percentages, the way it goes in is the way it needs to come out. Now, let's say I'm doing a deal with my buddy. He's a friend of mine. Or whatever. He's somebody that's not related. He's not on that disqualified persons list. If I had it in the agreement that there would be a different payout or something, that would be okay, because it's not they're not disqualified to each other. So if you want to do that or have that as a question, again, don't just listen to my general answer here. Talk to an IRA specialist. They can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, guys. And whenever we talk about, paying out different than the proportion, then we start getting into, well, now one of the accounts is receiving a benefit from the other, right? Now you're looking into a disqualified party receiving a benefit from the IRA, even though obviously they're both IRAs. Those two IRAs are disqualified from each other, right? And obviously, like Nathan said, there's general answers, and we do that on purpose because the IRS, they do it, right? They have very general definitions. They do not get very specific because they want to cast the widest net possible. But yeah, call an IRA specialist. We're happy to sit down and take a look at it with you.
Anything else?
Someone's
jumping on, controlling my computer. Woohoo!
I think that's it. I think we've got everything.
Yep. Nice job. Thank you, everybody. Nicole, thank you for your help. I appreciate you all. Like I said, I'm going to go walk my dogs now. It's a nice day.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. And thank you, everybody, for stopping by. Y'all have a good weekend.